everybody and welcome to Dynamic GT League special fork up for race 7 at the Red Bull Ring Grand Prix circuit. It definitely shouldn't be a VW track. It should be an Alpha track. We'll see. Anyway, quick look at the championship standings after 6 races and 6 VW wins at no VW tracks. Steve F1 leads the way, 5-point gap between him and SGP. Tyler, he's not racing today, but he's in 3rd place and he's 1 point ahead of Demon R. Demon R's got a 20-point gap over Jason in 5th place, but there is a battle for that 5th place between Jason, SRI and Dave the Harp. 11 points between the 3 of them. There's a little bit of a gap to Twilight in 8th place, and he's 5 ahead of Ridge Blues in 9th. Formula Gary sits in 10th place on 32 points, while Mitch is not far behind him on 29. Fluffy Planet joins Conrad in 12th place, both on 24 points, and they're 1 ahead of Hay, who's in 14th on 23. Jimmy's got 17 points, Bunsel has 13. We'll see how that's going to change around today. Okay, can't show you qualifying, but we can show you the results of qualifying, so here we go. And once again, he's really boring. He's on pole position for God knows how many times. It's Steve F1, and SRI though, shock surprise, joins him on the front row for the first time ever. Brilliant. And then we've got SGP and Jason on row 2. Row 3, we've got Demon R in 5th place and Mitch in 6th. A brilliant performance from Mitch there. On row 4, we've got Conrad. He lines up alongside Dave the Harp. The 2 alphas there could be quick starters. Row 5 sees Jimmy in P9, may get near the front. P10 is Twilight. We'll see how those two compare off the line. On row 6 we've got Bunsel and Formula Gary. Row 7 sees Fluffy Planet and Hay. And that's the grid for today. It's going to be an interesting race. 40 minutes around the Red Bull Ring. So time to hand over to the commentary team. And joining me on commentary this week, I think he's lost, it's Ridge Blues.
Yep, it's me. Thanks for having me, Dave. Happy to be here with you in the commentary box here in sunny Austria.
What have you done with Connor and Gary?
Oh, they're not in my base, mate.
Not in your base, cheeky bastards. Right, okay, that'll do. So Steve F1 then sitting on pole position, and SRI joins him on the front row for the first time ever as the lights go out, and away they go in the Red Bull Ring, and Ray, he's gone, he's off on a cruise already. Steve F1, I don't know if he's even moved yet, or eventually he hasn't. Here comes Mitch up alongside him now into turn 1, bit of bumping.
And I think that's a fair move from Mitch as well. Another great start from the Subarus with SRI, and I saw Jimmy making up a fair few places as well, so yeah, good to see.
He made up spaces and places all at the same time as Mitch has tried to attack Steve F1, but the straight line speed of that VW shows its power once again. In the background though, he's getting a little bit hairy. I think Jimmy all out of shape there, takes out Steve F1. Oh, that's costly, but that's good news for SRI.
Indeed, yeah, so SRI can hopefully pull away a little bit more now, given that situation, but it looks like Steve hasn't lost too many places, which is good to see as well.
Right there, I think he's having a look at the inside of SGP early on as Dave the Harp goes into turn 3 a little bit sideways. He goes out of it sideways as well.
Oh, that looks like a good move as well coming up. Is Dave going to be able to hold on to his position?
He might be able to. It looks like he may have had a little bit of lag in there as well. Jason's closing in on him rapidly. So yeah, Steve F1 recovered quite nicely. It did look like Jimmy was taking evasive and then realised, I mean, unfortunately we've seen it before, in that corner you take evasive to the right hand side, there's only one place you're going into the side of any cars that are ahead of you. Dave and SGP side by side into the penultimate corner though. Interesting corners around here, Rich. Which of the cars do you think are going to benefit the most?
Well, it's an interesting one. There's only been one car that's won so far this season, hasn't there? So let's see what happens in this race though. I see SRI's still got the lead, and he's still got a fair bit of gap in between first and second. Mitch line in second place, which is slightly ahead of Steve F1.
Oh, Connor, big sideways. Gary drives through him as he's ghosted. You're absolutely right there, Richard. But yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know if Connor was hit then or not, but it was very busy going into that first corner. SRI's in a brilliant position. Mitch, good to see him in back-to-back races again, as Hay is now at the head of the pack, as Demonar's trying to put some pressure on Fluffy. However, Twilight up the inside, he's trying to make the move on Fluffy, but the Toyota has got terrible acceleration out to the corners, so out to turn 2 he's not going to go anywhere. You see how much Fluffy is just driven away from Twilight.
Indeed, so let's see. Oh, we've moved away. I was going to say, let's see what pressure Fluffy can put under Hay.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, it'd be interesting to see, but we've got Steve F1 putting pressure on Mitch. I think Mitch is just right. He's going up the inside. Ooh, it's risky that, but if he gets Mitch onto the dirty part of the track, he may be able to make the move. But I don't think these particular 4 corners are going to be good for the VW drivers. However, Mitch, he's got to be careful, because if he pushes too hard, he could burn up his tyres, as they're now making their way towards the penultimate corner. I've got to say, SRI, he's not just led 1 lap, he's now led 2 laps, and is about to start leading the 3rd lap as well.
Indeed, and it's still a comfortable lead for SRI as well, so hopefully he can maintain this for the remainder of the race.
Well, do you really mean that? I'm sure you want him to bin it and then put the back. Oh, Steve F1 making a move on Mitch into turn 1.
Indeed, and he's made that position quite fair, so even though it's difficult to overtake in the last few corners of the previous lap, Steve's managed to do it on turn 1.
Yeah, turn 1 and 2, good place for the VWs to attack. Mitch may be able to attack back, but I don't think it's going to really work for him. David Arp doing well, sitting in 4th place at the moment, as now we've got, is that Jason? Yeah, Jason trying to catch up to David Hart. Mitch having a look. A bit too much curb.
And is that going to give a bit of an opportunity for SGP as well?
He doesn't need a second invitation, does he?
No, he doesn't.
He's going to take it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's just looking after his fuel at the moment, because, interestingly, with the way the championship standards are, Mitch going for it up the inside into turn 3. He's not getting that stopped. Oh yeah, binned it.
And that's going to put Mitch back a few places as well. Hopefully he'll maintain 6th position. It looks to be a gap between 6th and 7th, so hopefully that will not hampering him too much.
He's kind of got a bit lucky there, really, hasn't he? Oh, I can see in the background we've got Formula Gary, yeah, Demonar and Hay side by side. And then right behind them is Conrad and Bunsell, as Gary's now trying to make a bit of pressure or try and get past Hay. Although it's difficult here, because with 1 corner leading so quickly into the next, if you're off the racing line for 1 corner, you could be a sitting duck for the next.
It's difficult to get the racing line back in future corners, isn't it, if you're off the racing line on other ones?
Absolutely. Oh, SGP's got a decent run on Steve F1, and I was trying to mention a moment ago that just before Mitch binned him, that I wouldn't be surprised if SGP was just kind of pacing himself behind Steve F1, but now he's decided to go for him. And the reason I was thinking he might pace himself is because for SGP, he won't care who wins this race or what position he finishes, as long as he finishes ahead of Steve F1.
Indeed, so, well, if we look at the championship standings, Steve F1 is leading on 107 points, but SGP is only 5 points behind, so I can't remember the difference in points between 1st, 2nd and 3rd.
I think it's 20, 17, 15. So, yeah, if he finishes ahead of Steve F1 anywhere, he's going to close that gap quite usefully. Oh, Conrad's coming under pressure from Hay and from Bunsell. I mean, to be fair though, we're 6 minutes into this race, and I want SRI to go and win this race. I think it'd absolutely be brilliant, as these 3 are going to try and go into turn 3 all together. You know what? That's beautiful. All getting through the corner, and here comes Jimmy to make things interesting.
Indeed, and let's see if Jimmy can make it up the inside. I think he's backed out a little bit. I think going back to your previous points, well, it's nice to see Conrad making up the positions after he's been very early on in the race. Yeah. It's always nice to see a new winner in the DGT League, isn't it? So
yeah, definitely. I mean, especially when Tyler with his win earlier on in the championship was absolutely brilliant. I mean, everyone was absolutely delighted for him. As Jimmy's boxed in here, there's nowhere for him to go. Oh, Hayes taking a very tight line into the penultimate corner. Is he going for an early pit stop?
Let's have a look. I can't see him back in the picture, so Is it Hay? It looks like Hay's pitted, and Demon Aras as well.
Yeah, it is. So Hay and Demon are, and I believe Twilight in the pits, all for an early stop. That would suggest to me that they don't think they can do a one-stop race here. That'd be the only reason, I think, for pitting this early, to get enough fuel so you only have to do one more pit stop. Because with the boost, they'll be able to catch back up to where they were anyway, but then they've got a lot more fuel on.
Yeah, it's quite an advantageous strategy. If you pit early, it shouldn't be too difficult to catch up with the pack again.
Yeah, exactly.
Ready to make up positions for the later on in the race.
Bunsel's trying to make up positions right now up the inside of Gary, but he's about to end up in a Subaru sandwich because those Subarus, excuse me, so powerful in the traction zones. Oh dear. SGP, Steve F1 closing in on SRI. I hope SRI isn't going to start looking in his mirrors and start worrying about what's going on behind him, because he's in a brilliant position. Maybe he's just saving a bit of fuel, because this is the interesting thing. You might not be aware, Rich, but I don't think all of the drivers can get a one-stop out of it, and some of them that can, it's really, really touch and go as to whether it's quick enough to do.
Indeed, and you know, fuel is an interesting situation in each race. There's always the problem of people running out of fuel towards the end of the race as well. I know Rich Blues did it in the last race, so yep, that's something that everyone's got to keep in mind, especially the Subarus.
Definitely. Or Fluffy is all over the back of Gary here, and Bunsel and Jimmy there as well. And interestingly, those three that have pitted, they are catching up quite nicely. They're just coming around the penultimate corner now, so they're not too far away as we're nearly 9 minutes into this race. Oh, Bunsel having a look. I was going to say that move not really on up the inside into turn one. You make the corner way too tight. Jimmy on Gary though, that's going to be interesting.
Gary's gone really wide though, so when he's come back on, who has got it? I think Jimmy's going to get him at the next corner.
Yeah, I think Jimmy's kind of sneaking past him on the straight as well, and it'd be right in a way for Gary there to perhaps not really fight this one, because obviously he's in that position now, because unfortunately he ran a little bit wide, so hopefully we'll see him working on that throughout the race. To be fair, oh, big sideways there for Gary, sorry, probably deafened you, but yeah, I was surprised to see a Subaru sideways. It doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't, maybe he lent on his handbrake, but let's have a look. So we've got SRI still in the lead, fighting off SGP as we go down the list of drivers.
That would do. Rich is still sitting in 6th place, so he still survived quite nicely after he was off earlier. Conrad 7th, so he's recovered quite nicely as well. But then we've got the three that have pitted, and interestingly, I think Hayes come out ahead of Twilight and Demon R. I think Demon R lost a place there, but they are now closing in on the back of the pack. So if for anybody else they're thinking a two-stop strategy, around about now would not be a bad time to pit. Split the last 30 minutes into two 15s. I don't think SRI is thinking about pit stops though right now. He's thinking about what's going on in his mirrors. I think I may have lost my co-commentator.
Quite right, yes, I was on mute.
Did you press mute? Well done. Oh, that's brilliant.
So I won't touch that button for the rest of the race, how's that?
Yeah, you might want to avoid that, but you know what, now that you've done that, that's brilliant. Gary is going to absolutely rip you for that. Steve
dear.
F1, sorry, I'm just going to cut in. You can leave your button alone. Steve F1 takes the lead of the race, but SRI switchback takes the lead back off him. Interestingly, SGP was in second place as you went on mute, but Steve F1 managed to slip past him and SRI pretty much on the same straight. Steve F1 going for the lead of the race again into turn 3. This is fascinating stuff. They're going to have to be careful though. The more these battle, the closer Dave the Harper is going to get to them.
Indeed, and when I was on mute, I was talking about there's the situation that SRI found himself in. He was leading at the time, and we was talking about when he should pit. I said if I was him, I'd probably be thinking about carrying on racing until something like this happened. So maybe within the next lap or two, we'll see SRI pitting.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. While he's in the lead, stay there. Once these guys get ahead of him, as it looks like they're trying to do, it opens up the possibilities for him, because once they've passed the pit entry, he has the opportunity of an undercut.
Exactly, yeah.
So it'll be
carrying on for one more lap though.
Yeah, well, you see, the thing is, I know that SRI has found with the Subaru is that if you drive it a particular way, it feels like you're driving it really slowly, but you're actually driving it really fast because you're in the turbo range. And as a byproduct, as SGP having a look up the inside and backs out of it, that's put SRI off. He was compromised by the dummy by SGP, and he slips through. But yeah, the byproduct of driving the Subaru in that way is that it saves fuel. So, as long as he's not too aggressive, he's got a chance of doing a one-stop here. Mitch recovering, now closing in on the back of Jason, so doing quite nicely at the moment.
2 clean races, I think.
You so nearly cursed him then.
Sorry, Mitch, that's on me.
It's alright. I'm sure he'll let you off. It could have been worse. He could have ended up in the barrier and facing the wrong direction.
That's true. There is always that.
Interestingly, though, Conrad.
Jason.
Oh no! Oh, that's a difficult gravel trap to try and get out of as well. And just as it returns to the track, the pack is there.
Unlucky for Hay there.
Yeah, I don't think Hay really had anywhere he could go. There was cars on the right of him, gravel on the left, and Jason was stuck in the middle with him.
Indeed he was. Now hopefully Hay can capitalise on Jason as well, and hopefully make... Actually, has Jason let him pass? Might have done.
I think Hayes managed to keep going, so I think... you know what? I think what it was, after Jason's had contact with Hay, I'm hearing that he was also collected by Twilight, so he may have ended up back in the gravel, or was Demon R making the move on Formula Gary. So Demon R has already pitted, so has Hay. The Subarus there have not. Steve F1 leading the race, SGP right up his gearbox, and this is kind of what I was saying earlier about SGP does not need to do anything daft here. All he wants to do is finish ahead of Steve F1, so if he wants to sit behind him, he can, and wait and pounce at the right time. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him not really attacking too much here as he takes the lead of the race.
Indeed, so SGP's taken advantage of maybe Steve saving fuel.
Could be. I mean, it's possible that SGP saved the fuel that he wants to save already. Hey, getting a bit close to Gary's bumper there. But yeah, it's possible he saved the fuel he wanted to already, and can now just turn the engine up and go for it. Hey and Gary now side by side as they make their way down towards turn 3. And interestingly, Demon R, having made that pit stop, he's now right up behind Conrad pretty much, and Connor hasn't stopped yet.
Indeed, but it looks like Demon R's bringing the pack along with him as well, so Conrad might find himself in a little bit of bother in the next coming laps.
Yeah, well, interestingly, right, for those that are not able to do a one-stop, they're going to be realising that around about now. So we could see people pitting anywhere in the next 3 minutes. If they are, chances are they're on a 2-stop. If they can get to 20 minutes, then yeah, it's an easy 1-stop. But it will be interesting to see if anybody does try going for an undercut, pitting before the 20 minutes. But if they've got a good 20% of fuel, let's say, then they can fill up and actually get to the end as long as they drive the stint the same way. So Hay trying to put some pressure on Gary still. Gary running a little bit wide. Oh, that's going to compromise him. It's going to compromise Hay and Jimmy and Jason. He's going to recover and take 3 cars in 1 corner.
Quite interestingly, I don't think Gary was quite as compromised as first thought. He's managed to stay behind Jason, and let's see if he can stay in front of Hay for this corner. He's gone wide again though, but it looks like he's maintained position.
Yeah, Twilight trying to make moves as well now with him having pitted earlier on, so he may have fresher tyres, but he's going to have more fuel on. And for those guys that did pit early, you're basically waiting for everybody in front of you to go into the pits and get out of the way. As Twilight making a lovely move around the outside of Jason there. That is phenomenal.
A great move by Twilight there. I think Jason might be able to capitalise on the upcoming corner though. Let's see.
Well, the VW's got so much power down that straight, whether he's going to be able to get it stopped in the corner or not, I don't know. Twilight's going to try and go all the way around the outside. Oh, but he gets a bit of a twitch on, and that's compromised him. Gary now trying to come up along the other side of him. So, yeah, Twilight definitely finding himself in the action at the moment.
Indeed. But he's a good racer, he's a clean racer. so it should be fine as he slides along the track.
Yeah, I'm going to wait though. Who's he going to hit off now? Now that you've said that, who's he going to hit off? Oh, big sideways! And that's going to let Gary up at the inside again. And that's one of the difficult things with the Toyota. It is so much more sideways than any of the other cars. And as soon as that happens, it's time just gone. Having a quick look at Mitch. David Harps is into the pits from P4. He's not one stop in this race. Conrad into the pits. I don't think he's going to be one stopping either. Not with that amount of fuel. He may have been able to get one more lap, but yeah, I don't think he's going to be one stopping it. So that's moved Mitch up to 4th place, I think it is, and the pack is still right there. It's Twilight now running a little bit wide.
Indeed, but he's managed to get back on track, slightly ahead of Fluffy, but he's going to give Fluffy a bit of a toe up for the next corner.
And that he is. He might even pass him a fishing rod through his window as Fluffy's trying to make a move up the inside. Interesting.
You know, I have no idea what the reference is towards Fluffy and Fishy. Beyond me.
It's his sponsor.
Of course. It all makes sense.
Yeah, and for anyone that doesn't know, have a look at the DGT video from a few days ago. The admin's announcement one, Fluffy making the move. Well, I say making the move, he's still trying to make the move alongside Twilight. Twilight giving him all the road he wants, and unfortunately that's allowed Hay to slip through as well.
Yeah, I think Hay's having quite a good race so far today.
Okay.
Nice to see.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're absolutely right. He's definitely.
I thought you just began to laugh then. That's what I said.
No, I was coughing. I'm trying not to cough. I think I've been talking too quickly. Steve F1, I've just seen, is driving around with his hazards on. I'm not sure why. SRI is going for the pit lane. Okay, this is crucial. This is interesting. How much fuel has he got on board while he's going into the pits? So Stephen Norris at 26%. Holy cow! Right, 26%. That is crucial piece of information as Mitch heads into the pits and the pit wall. And Mitch has got 9%. Okay, the reason that 26% for SRI is interesting is 26% of fuel is 5 minutes worth of driving. That means that SRI can fill the tank up and get to the end of the race. He's now in a position to undercut both SGP and Steve F1.
That's good news for SRI. Then let's hope he can keep the pace that he's had with the first half of this race, and hopefully when SGP and Steve F1 have to pit, SRI will be right in the mix again.
He's definitely going to be hoping that. I mean, I think he's just coming out of the pit lane now. There's Twilight still trying to keep cars behind him. And that's Bunsell right behind him as well. I've got to say, Bunsell loves driving this Toyota. Something about him being a bit sideways, he really likes. Sorry, SRI is actually the car behind the pack. So SRI, he may end up getting compromised if he catches the pack too quick, as Bunsell takes evasive from behind Twilight. But yeah, I mean, I would not want to see SRI catch these guys and then get stuck and lose time.
No, that's fair to say. I mean, I think SRI's the best thing that he wants to do now is to see everyone pit in front of him.
Yeah.
But what it does mean as well is that SGP and Steve F1 might be in a similar situation to what SRI finds himself in as well. So
that's true. SGP going for the pit lane then. So he is going to cover off SRI. Steve F1 is not. Oh.
One more lap for Steve F1 though. Let's see if SGP can beat him in the next few laps when Steve has to pit.
Well, I'm surprised that Steve F1 didn't follow him in as Jason heads into the pit lane. I mean, SGP was not going to get another lap out of his car, that's for certain, not with the amount of fuel he had. Okay, SRI is now on the back of the pack, so is he going to gain on SGP, who is currently in the pit lane?
Let's see where Steve is. Sorry, SGP. We need to see where SGP is coming out. I can see him coming out of the pit lane now. Is SRI going to beat SGP out?
Well, he's coming.
I don't think he is.
He's coming around the first corner. Oh no, Bunsell! Big sideways into the side of SRI, and there is SGP. So SRI did get the undercut. Excuse me, he is ahead of SGP, but he's now got 30 tyres.
If you want to clear your throat, Dave, please feel free to put yourself on mute, but just remember to take yourself
I'm
on
not
mute.
touching my mute button.
Interestingly, did I think I just missed the last few seconds. Did SRI beat SGP out of the pits?
He did, yes. He managed to get ahead of him. Even though he ended up on the grass, he was ahead of him. But SGP, the run up to turn 2, was able to take the position because of SRI's dirty tyres. This though is interesting now for regards to Steve F1, because both SGP and SRI are in a position to undercut Steve F1. So as he is heading into, no, he's not heading into the pits, he's going for another lap.
I'm very surprised at that. I would have thought with SGP pitting the lap before, we'd have seen Steve F1 pitting this lap.
Yeah.
But perhaps he'll do a few more laps. We're not sure how much fuel he's got left in his car as well, do we? So as Demon R comes into the pit lane from second.
Yeah, from second, and it's his second pit stop. Gary heading into the pits, I think, for the first time for him. Gary got a decent amount of fuel left. Demon R had 24% fuel left, so he's going for a quicker pit stop now, but fill the tank up probably to get to the end. This is going to get very interesting. SGP heading into turn 1 now. I don't think Demon R is anywhere near exiting the pits. No, he's not. But yeah, I'm baffled that Steve F1 hasn't pitted, because the undercut here could be massive, unless he's hoping that SGP and SRI get stuck in traffic, and also perhaps Steve F1 maybe trying to think about covering off Demon R, who has kind of got himself back into this race a bit.
Indeed, I think that's fair to say. Yeah. Nothing else to say.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, you'll have been waiting for it, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it blatantly and obviously. Are you ready for this?
I've been waiting for stuff.
You know what I'm on about.
Come on.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Agad.
Agad who?
Push pineapple, secretary. You worked it out, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Steve F1 into the pits, by the way. Let's see how much fuel he had left. 3%.
Oh, he's burnt as much fuel as he can. No more laps for him to do. Let's get him refueled up and see him at the end of the race.
Yeah, well, that's an impressive amount of time on those tyres. On that fuel. But has he had to slow down so much that he's going to lose loads of time to SGP, as Conrad making a move on Fluffy Planet for the lead of the race?
It's good to see Conrad leading after the spin he had very early on in the race. Does Conrad have to pit again though? That's to be seen, and it looks like Steve F1 has come out ahead of everybody.
Oh my goodness, you know what, you are right, Rich, you are right. So Conrad hasn't taken the lead of the race, so interestingly Steve F1 being able to, I am surprised.
Do we know if Steve F1 filled his tank to the end of the race?
Well,
he must have.
I'm sure he will have put enough fuel to get to the end of the race, as
yeah.
we now see Jason and Mitch going side by side, and one ahead of the other through turn 2. I mean, he would have had a shorter pit stop than the other guys, because he's pitted 6 minutes later. Yeah, and I suppose he's had another 2 laps on really light fuel, as Mitch having a look at the inside of Jason spots him, gives him just about enough room through the corner. Oh, it's a little bit physical, but there's nothing wrong with that there. So yeah, has he still got his hazards flashing, as Steve F1? Maybe it's the short pit stop because of the short fuel, but also when he was running with hardly any fuel in his car would have been faster potentially than SGP and SRI's, because they've got full fuel.
You know, there's so many things to take into account, isn't there, Dave? From the boost to undercutting to, but that it was all against having a lighter fuel tank for the last few laps as well. Yeah. It could go either way, couldn't it? Sometimes.
Definitely. Fluffy, new one, heads into the pit lane as Conrad is now trying to take the lead of the race.
And it looks like he's going to get him up the inside of turn 1. Nice move by Conrad there.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a little bit wiggly on the sausage curb, but that's going to happen in pretty much any of the cars, really. You mentioned that you're not sure if Conrad's going to need to pit again. I've got a feeling he will. If I remember rightly, he pitted after about 16-17 minutes and had hardly any fuel in his car. So I've got a feeling he may need to do a splash and dash a little later on, as once again we see Jason and Mitch going side by side into turn 2 and Gary slowly catching up on them.
Indeed, and let's see if Gary can catch him up enough to do some overtakes himself. But at present, he's still a little bit behind. It's nice to see Mitch and Jason doing some nice driving.
That's true. That is true. Interestingly, I'm going to ask you a question now, Rich. Was Mitch and Jason still battling away? What are your thoughts on how this championship has gone with the concept of the different cars? Do you think it's been a success? Do you think it's not worked? Do you have any other thoughts? Not that we pay you to have thoughts, but
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I wish I was paid to have thoughts, but that's by the by. I've thoroughly enjoyed watching it. To be honest, we've seen, the likes of Demon R being a lot more involved in the pack when normally we see him, winning championships, winning races, and always being at the front.
Conrad, sorry, just wait a sec. Conrad heads into the pits, and so he has got a 13-minute splash and dash as SGP is now attacking Steve F1 for the lead of the race. Sorry to cut you off there, Rich, but all of a sudden stuff started happening.
No, that's fine. If you want to ask me a question, but then cut me off mid-answer, then you crack on, Dan. No problem at all.
I will. Thank you very much. SGP takes the lead of the race. Right, you can carry on now, Rich. Thank you.
Yeah, so like I said, I've really enjoyed it. We've seen Demon R in the mix. We thought the Subarus would be probably, I suppose, higher up than what they have been in previous races. We've seen people like Rich Blues get high finishes of 6th, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the highest he's finished before. And then we've also had, Hay improving race by race as well, as Dave the Harp is bouncing along the track here.
Yeah, I think he's gone through. Is he raving? He's doing something. Okay, so Dave's Alpha definitely doing a few interesting things, and interestingly, Dave has managed to get ahead of Gary. So even though Gary has sort of caught up to Jason and Mitch, Dave has managed to sneak past him. I mean, I think it's interesting what you were saying there. That it's been interesting to watch. I mean, there have been a few different opinions on the cars. I mean, I'm still fully of the opinion that the Subaru is the best car. The Alpha should be the second best car, but it's actually a bit questionable. The VW, I think actually the guys that are driving the VW as SRIs heading into the pits. Oh no, why? Why?
A late pit stop for SRI, and that's going to hamper his high finish.
Oh, you know what? He's only got 35% of fuel in his. I don't think he filled it up.
I think that might have been an error from his mechanics or his pit crew.
Yeah, somebody is getting fired, or somebody ain't getting no tenants tonight, that's for certain. I mean, coming to this point of the race now, you'd want to be looking at your fuel gauges. Once again, we see Jason and Mitch going side by side up towards turn 2. Someone's trying to hog the camera time.
I think they are, but it's great to see, isn't it? So
yeah, that is true. I mean, we're talking about the VW and Alpha. I mean, these two are clearly similarly matched drivers in two very different cars that have got very different strengths, and they're having a fantastic battle. And I mean, you can't really ask for much more than that. I mean, the VW's got the speed on the straights, but not in the corners. Mitch has got the speed in the corners, but not on the straights. And this is absolutely brilliant. Jason going defensive because he knows he's got to try and cover Mitch off in the corners.
Hey, it's great to see, isn't it, having two different cars racing side by side against each other, and it's interesting to say with regards to the VWs, winning every race and perhaps being the third best car.
Yeah.
Or it goes by. I mean, there's a couple of more things to take into account. You've got SGP and Steve F1. Is Tyler in the VW as well?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
You've got 3, and who's the 4th? Sorry. There you go. You've got 4 very, very talented drivers in the VW, and that will help a little bit. Plus the fact that SGP, we know SGP, and we know Steve F1. They do put in a lot of preparation for each race, and that will help them as well.
Yeah, I mean,
and reap the benefits, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we probably couldn't have had the worst 4 drivers in that car, to be fair, because they've basically spent the time to work out how that car needs driving. As we're 3 wide heading towards turn 1, 2 Subarus on a Toyota, that's only going to go well for the Subarus, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, they have basically spent the time to work out how that car needs to be driven, and it turns out it needs to be driven very slowly in the corners in a very high gear, and what that ends up doing is saving loads of fuel. It turns out it's pretty quick on the straights as well. So this is where, like, I think it was Brands Hatch, they struggled a little bit. Spain, they should not have got a victory at Spain. Demonar messed that one up. But at Spain, they were struggling so much because of the type of corners that it was. But what I will say is, oh, Fluffy, big!
That's affected Jimmy, hasn't it? You know, he's gone to last position. But there's still 8 minutes left of this race. He's not too far from the pack. Let's hope he can catch up within the next lap or two.
I don't know if Fluffy was tagged into him there. I've got to say, SGP trying to pull away from Steve F1 at the moment, and I don't blame him. Demonar's managed to get himself into third place. He's kind of sitting there all on his own at the moment. Mitch and Jason battling has helped him keep a bit of a gap, but then we've got the whole rest of the pack literally in the space of like a second and a half, which is, I've got to say, I mean, it's frantic and manic at times, but it's also brilliant. What I will say is, I mean, as far as like success or failure for the concept of the championship, in many ways it has been a success. Some people have been having their best results. Tyler winning a race, you mentioned Rich Blues.
Yeah.
Gary's been having some decent results. SRI, he's had a second in qualifying. He's battled for the lead of races. He's led this race.
Look competitive in this race as well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if he didn't need to pit for the fuel towards the end here, he'd be in third place at the moment. And right now, though, he's at the head of the pack, trying to pull away from these guys, probably kicking himself as well, that knowing that he should have been much. Oh, Dave Yarb's gone deep. Or has he? I don't know.
And you know what, I think with Ray as well, I think, you know, he might find himself disappointed being in 6th place. However, you know, we can't forget that he has performed very, very well in this race as well, with exception to one mistake. You know, and that can't be forgotten. So, and it looks like who's gone off at the back? Was that Bunsell, did you say?
It was, yeah, and then I think Fluffy's just got a bit sideways and tagged Jimmy again. I think Bunsell and Twilight both got sideways there. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, it doesn't matter what car you're in, you've got to keep it on the tarmac, and SRI has been doing that more often than not recently. I mean, I'm sure we all remember the race at Le Mans a few championships ago where he completely forgot about the first chicane. That kind of thing is not happening as much nowadays, and he is. I mean, he's been able to show what the Subaru can do. So there are many positives to the current championship, as Gary and Jimmy nudging wing mirrors. They could swap wing mirrors if they want. They'll fit. But I'll take the success a little bit further in that Demonar's not won a race, so he's not winning a championship. That's a successful result of the mix-up of the championship. Unfortunately, it looks like SGP and Steve F1 are going to win, so it's not mixed it up enough in that regard. I've got to say, this is a brilliant battle. As I think David Obbs is like,
hopping along.
He reminds me of from Family Guy.
Quagmire.
Quagmire, that's it.
Oh, who's this going up?
Bit of
was that a fair? Indeed. Oh no, that's unfortunate for Conrad. He's done something very, very similar to what he did early on in the race. But again, I think there's still enough time for Conrad to catch up. And we're going back to what we were talking with regards to, you know, SGP and Steve F1. You know, taking the time to learn the car before the race. All credit to them. You know, you can't knock them for doing that, can you? And that's put them in the position that we find themselves in the championship.
Exactly. And I mean, also, I think Hay is. Is he waiting?
I think he might have been there, and yeah, we like to see that, don't we, Dave? If a driver's at fault for an incident, and I'm not entirely sure what incident it was, then it's you know, it's a gentlemanly thing to do, just to stop and let them pass again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know DGT could go down a much stricter route, but that's not what they're about.
We don't want to see a stricter route, do we? We like to see the same drivers on track, race than race, doing what they do in a fair way.
Yeah, exactly. I thought Dave was going to put Gary into the pit wall then. Although, to be fair, Dave's car is lagging about so much, I don't think those around him are really very confident of where they're
It's
seeing
an
his
awkward
car.
situation for the pack, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I think as well what we see now is different to what the drivers would be seeing. It would be much worse for them. Yeah, don't press pause. That's, yeah. Yeah.
And just out of curiosity for myself and the viewers, what would Dave the Hart be seeing in this situation?
Well, it's interesting. I just want to mention Bunsell just took out Jimmy, but did wait for him in the middle of that corner, on the exit of that corner, which is good to see. But yeah,
Right.
all of these guys, they're definitely being put off at the moment by not knowing where Dave the Harp's car is. Now, for Dave the Harp,
Is he,
bloody
is,
hell!
is he going to take Jimmy off? I think
Yeah,
he
it
might.
is. Yeah. Now, I could imagine Dave the Harp. I mean, from his view, what he may be seeing is everybody else glitching about.
Yeah.
So to him, it may seem like he's not the one with the problem. But I do know that we've seen it in the past where, oh, hey, got sideways, tags side of Conrad as Gary's trying to stay ahead of Fluffy. Yeah, so I do know that we've had drivers in the past where everyone can see that one person lagging, and that one person lagging sees everybody else lagging. So
Yeah,
it's difficult for Dave, but it's also difficult for everybody else. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I mean,
it's one of them things, isn't it, Dave? It doesn't happen race by race, and more often than not, we don't see it happen, do we? So
No. I mean, it's very rare that I've seen it happen to Dave the Harp. We have seen it happen to some people in the past, but that's down to having a very weak internet, and that's been dealt with as Jimmy trying to attack Fluffy, who's trying to attack Gary. Fluffy's in a Subaru sandwich this time. He backs out of it. That could
nice
be
move.
That was a nice move from all three drivers there.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's good to see as well as we switch back.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave?
SRI's caught up to Mitch.
And let's see if we can put some pressure on with 1 or 2 laps to go, Dave.
I think, looking at the amount of time we've got coming up to 1 minute left, this could be the last lap of the race, or it might not be for the front few. So SRI's got an opportunity here then on Mitch into turn 3. Mitch covering the inside, SRI has a look at the outside, going to have a look at the switchback, and then he'll have a look at the switchback, then he'll check his beer can, then he'll put his foot down and he'll drive past the Alfa Romeo. Interesting, I'm wondering if Mitch has had to save some fuel, because he's dropped off from the back of Jason. Maybe that battle early on cost him a little bit on the old go-go juice. SRI still kicking himself, but has got past Mitch now, so he's up to 5th place, may be able to catch Jason. Looking at the time, 30 seconds to go to the 40 minutes are up. I think
It's going to be very tight for this pack to make it, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. Dave the Harp head in the pack at the moment, ahead of Jimmy, and then Conrad and Gary and Fluffy and Bunsell and Hay and Twilight.
I don't think they're going to make it.
No, 12 seconds. It's going to be close. I don't even know if SRI's and Mitch are going to make it. They're coming up to the line. Yes, they'll make it. They're coming up to the line now. 5, 4, 3, 2. Yeah, they're not going to make it. So this is going to be the last lap for Dave the Harp. It's going to be close.
Oh, close finish again, as it always is in the pack. It looks like Dave the Harp's finished 7th, Jimmy finishes 8th, so that'll do them wonders for their championship.
It definitely will. SGP has managed to keep that gap to Steve F1, or Steve F1 kept the gap to SGP. That's going to make things interesting now. A 3-point switch between these two, and that puts.
We're looking at 2 points.
Exactly, 2 points and 2 races to go. Ooh,
There's nothing in it really, is that? I mean, they may as well start off on an even keel, especially with the points difference between 1st and 2nd places. So
yeah, definitely. Interestingly, I thought SRI might catch Jason. Jason's catching Demon R on this final lap, and Steve F1 is closing in a little bit on SGP, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I've got to say, we've had a brilliant race so far, and I'm amazed that SGP and Steve F1 are going to sort of finish 1 and 2 in this race, but if it was going to finish 1 and 2 between them, I'd want it this way round just to keep things interesting for the championship. So SGP round the penultimate corner for the final time, and round the final corner for the final time, unless he spins it. So it will be a victory then for SGP here at the Red Bull Ring. Got to say, well done to him. Steve F1's going to cross the line in 2nd place. Well done to him as well. Demon R, a little bit twitchy. Jason definitely closing in, but it is going to be 3rd place for Demon R, 4th place for Jason, 5th place for SRI.
Good result for SRI here.
Yeah, he's done phenomenally well to recover. And Mitch, I think he was out of fuel
Out of
right
fuel,
at the end.
yep.
But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if he pushed it a bit on that previous lap to get across the line.
Knowing that if he gets across the line and the pack behind him don't, he's guaranteed 6th place.
Exactly. He'd be safe then.
Yes.
Well, I've got to say, what a race we've had. Yeah, very exciting.
It's been a great race, hasn't it? It's been a pleasure to commentate on. So,
well, normally at this point we'd chat a little bit about how we think people have done, or if anyone stood out, or anything at all. Really, I mean, you know what? It's your first time in this situation, Rich. So I suppose you've got an opportunity for any of the drivers that questions they may want to ask, or you may want to ask, and now might not be a bad time to try and ask. That's put you on the spot, and you won't have anything ready.
I've no idea what you mean as well. Sorry.
What I mean is, like, basically, you're here. You've got a voice.
I'm here. I've got a voice.
Yeah, when you ain't got mute on, and you have the opportunity to ask anything you want, really.
Oh, I mean, thanks. Like I say, putting me on the spot. I'm not very good at being put on the spot as well. You know, can you ask me next time?
Maybe.
How's that for a question?
Can you ask me next time? Well, okay, I'll let you off with that one. It was a question. Okay. Interesting one with Steve and SGP. Obviously, brilliant races for them. Mitch has had a good race. Jason, he's Mr. Consistent no matter what car you put him in, really. It's the result there is going to have mixed up the standings a little bit, because I think Demon R's going to have jumped ahead of Tyler. I think Jason may have closed in on Tyler a bit. SRI will have also closed in on Tyler, but dropped a bit to Jason. Mitch may have gained a place or two. The pack's going to switch around quite a lot there, I think. It's going to definitely make it interesting heading into the last two races. And the next race is Laguna Seca.
Indeed, and I think you're right, and I think, you know, Tyler unfortunately missed this race. There's a fair gap, not with Demon R, but with Jason and SRI. Yes, they would have caught up, but Tyler's still got a few more points in his pocket to maintain 4th place, I believe.
Yeah, he's still got a few things in his pocket to play with.
Indeed.
So yeah, Laguna Seca next up, and from the bit of practice that I've seen, it's an interesting one. That the Subarus are very good there, because they can ride curbs and they're not going to go sideways. And at that track, if you dip a wheel in the gravel, which is so easy to do, normally you'd end up sideways. So the Subaru has an opportunity there. The VWs, I actually think, might struggle a little bit there, because the final corner is such a slow hairpin that they're going to struggle to get the power down. Once they've got the power down, they'll be alright. But then the next sort of 4 or 5 corners are very tricky corners for them. It'll be an interesting one for the Alfa Romeo. I think the Alfa guys at that track are just going to have to go for it. Don't bother saving fuel, just absolutely go for it. For the guys in the Toyotas, take a sick bag, because chances are you're going to be spinning. But yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit earlier anyway about the success and the failures or potential failures of the championship. I do want to touch on a little bit more on that.
Yeah,
One of the things that obviously I think has helped as well is that the guys that have had the Subaru this championship, it has been of benefit to them to be able to have that car. Whether it be like for the likes of Rich Blues and Jimmy that don't get time to practice, so they can jump on in a car that's stable. It's not going to do anything stupid on them. Whereas if they were in the Toyota, they would come on and be spinning and they'd get fed up with it.
You're not wrong. I think you bang on the money, and I think, you know, like you say, the stability of the Subaru really helps out the guys that can't practice. But then equally, you know, we've got Bunsell, for example, in a Toyota. Yes, he chose
it.
Well, he did choose it. He's a pack driver.
Yeah.
I am not sure, to be honest, how much practice he puts in. However, he's always in the pack. Yes, he does go sideways. Yes, you know, he likes a good bump draft. But the effort's there, and I think he does a good job.
Yeah, I mean, he's said himself that he picked that car because it's a fun car to drive, and to be honest, it is. It really is a fun car to drive. It can be a little frustrating when you're trying to be, well, you have to be very precise with it to get it to go fast, but it is a very fun car to drive, just not when you end up facing the wrong direction. But yeah, I mean, I do know that I think the admins have kind of spoken a little bit and said if they were going to go down a similar route of concept, which I mean, personally, I like the idea of the concept, but if they were going to go down a similar route, I think they were sort of talking about what they might do is force any champions to be in the same car, making sure that that car is the worst of them all, so that, for example, Demon or SGPS, I nearly said SRI, maybe, you never know, Steve F1, if they were all in the same car, if they were all in the Toyota this championship, those three would definitely be battling each other. There'd be other guys in stronger cars potentially ahead of them. So if they were forced to be in the worst car, then it could make things a little bit interesting everywhere else. But I guess it's something that they perhaps have to look at. The other possibility is, Rich, I mean, I'll ask you, maybe something you never thought of. Obviously in this championship there's been 4 different cars used, and yes, it's been interesting to watch. But is it possible that, having seen that and seen the big differences between the cars, could that hint towards everybody being in the same car being a better option?
I mean, I think both have their advantages, don't they? I am with you. I think it'd be interesting if the admins sat down and had a chat and discussed having different cars for a future season, but essentially taking away what they did with this season, as in give people a choice, as in, and then you know, force the better drivers to be in the worst cars. I mean, I haven't. They're not really suggestions, but some thoughts from me. If you don't mind listening for a minute or so.
This is what I was on about, Hannah. You have you've got a voice now.
I do.
Easy.
Is there, for example, an opportunity to apply some kind of gentleman's agreement and give the stronger drivers a different power to weight ratio, or
yes,
or has that been discussed before? Is there an option to lock it in using whoever creates the lobbies? Or
it is something that has been discussed. Unfortunately, there is no way of locking it within the settings.
Yeah,
it would have to be. I mean, the one way the SGP sort of mentioned it to me was, it would have to be a sort of a champions trust. The champions take a weight penalty. So basically, we'd all be in the same car, perhaps max tuned, minimum weight, but the champions have to have an extra 100 kilos on.
Yeah.
Now, there are difficulties with that. Personally, with the group of drivers that we've got at the moment, and those people that would be taking that penalty, I would trust them to do so.
Me too.
Because if they were found to not do it, then it'd be blatantly cheating or genuine mistake. But from my experience and SRI and SGP's experience of running very competitive leagues in the past, is someone could always say, well, how do we know that they've got that weight on? Now, they could implement ways of saying, right, before qualifying, you guys need to do this for us, and then everybody would know. So I'll give you an example, because it is stuff that we've done in the past on F1 games. I live stream, right? So for me, basically what I would do is, on my live stream, I would go into my car settings and physically show that I'm carrying that extra 100 kilos. And then I would go to the track, and you would see at no point it gets changed. So anyone that would question it would just have to look at the video. Now, with it being 3 people, it could easily be done where, for example, SGP and Steve F1, if they don't live stream, they could just record a video clip, because once they go into qualifying, they're not changing it again, because you can't. So there is ways that it can be done, but there isn't, unfortunately, a way it can be done on the settings in the game, which is why I think sort of SGP and SRI kind of thought about. I mean, okay, so I know, for example, the Ferrari Group 4 Ferrari is a brilliant car, but you put it up against everything else, it's a really shit car.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to pick that car and go, right, okay, champions, you three are in that car, and everybody else is in the four-wheel drive Subaru.
Yes.
Then those three champions, they've got a tail-happy car that actually isn't very fast, and everybody else has got a Subaru. So that'd be one way of locking it within the settings. Now, you could still have it where a car could have maximum power, minimum weight, because in something like the Ferrari, the more power you give it, the more tail happy it gets. So it's not of a big benefit to up the power in that. So there's definitely ways it can be approached, that's for certain. It just depends on what kind of route you want to go down. I do know though that the next championship is obviously the Ford, which has been announced recently. It's going to be over the Christmas period. I also know that the next car has been selected as well. So
I think you're missing a championship, aren't you?
Oh, bloody hell, you know what? I am. There's the Masters, right?
Yep, that's the one.
The anniversary, yeah. Which, that'll be starting soon.
Historic anniversary.
Yes, that's the one. I don't know how I forgot that. Then there's the Ford, over the Christmas period. And the next car has already been selected. Now, I do know that it's one car, it's not multiples. Okay. But it's...
Give us any hints?
No. Well, I will actually, yeah. It's got four wheels. Yeah.
It narrows it down.
It does, a little bit. Definitely not a reliant Robin. But yeah, so that's going to give them the opportunity, though, to have a look. And the car that they've chosen, it not opens up, but it allows options after that. It's not like the car. It'd be so easy for me to just say, "Oh, it's this," but that's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
Because it's a little bit like with the Mazdas that we're using. That's a very interesting car, right? It's a very unique type of car to drive, and at the end of that, I personally felt that it needed a bit of a palate cleanser, and that's kind of what the WTF is. It's a bit of a palate cleanser to let you forget the Mazda, but also just have a bit of fun over the Christmas period, and then in the new year, there's going to be a championship that should be brilliant. But if you tried running that championship straight after the Mazda, it might not quite have the effect it really should deserve. But the choice they've gone with should be absolutely brilliant, but leaves the opportunity for multi-car championship after that.
Yeah.
In whatever class they want to go for. So there's plenty of options.
I've got a couple of more ideas if before I put my soapbox away. First one, could there be? I mean, and by all means, I'm more than happy to be shot down on these ideas as well.
Yeah.
First one, could we have 16 drivers, 8 teams, and put the best driver with the worst driver, and then put the in terms of a championship, have some kind of constructors championship, and put the 2 points together instead of an individual championship?
It could be done. There's no reason why it couldn't be done. However, I do know that I'm pretty sure it was SGP that said it. He's kind of against the idea of going down the route of teams for one simple reason. What he's afraid would happen there is that when you pair people together in teams, that then separates the group.
Right.
So he's concerned about, if we were to go down the route of constructors, that yes, it would be interesting and exciting for the videos and for the racers. But from a personal perspective, away from kind of
It will hamper the group, won't it, a little bit?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that comes from a bit of like past experience where, so, I mean, to be honest, when we were doing F1 leagues, it came from when the chat party first came in. Because there was a time where there was no such thing as chat parties, and the only audio you had was in-game audio. Then when chat parties came in, that it was like, oh, that's brilliant. And then when the constructors thing sort of took off, people then went off into their own chat parties for the racers, and then that ended up being they'd go off into their own lobbies for practices. And so instead of people coming together online, they were going online and separated. So I know for SGP that is a concern for him. So you're not getting shot down on that one. It's more a personal reason as to why they might not go that route.
But do you know what? That's fair enough, though. I think the beauty of the Dynamic GT League is that yes, we're nearly 2 years into this league. However, we've seen drivers come and go, but these 16 drivers are, ones that have been there for a couple of seasons now. And in my opinion, they're probably a group of drivers that will stick around for quite a while as well, providing that individuals don't get fed up or upset anybody.
Well, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, I know within this league, whenever there's been tensions potentially brewing, I was going to say there's been interventions, but it's not interventions. There's been more. It's like saying we were saying during the race, DGT League could go down a strict route.
Yeah, when we don't want that, do we?
That's not the route they've gone. They've gone down the route of going. We see something's kind of been brewing a bit here. Is there anything wrong? And then finding out perhaps that maybe two people that have been bumping into each other were both thinking the same thing of, well, every time he's near me, he hits me. And it's just simple misunderstandings, and that for me is one of the beauties of the DGT League, that when it comes to any difficulties, we talk, and especially with all the difficulties that obviously the whole world's gone through in the last 6 months, hiding away and like hiding feelings or emotions, stuff like that, it's not the way to go. So it's better to
talk.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid using that tagline, but yeah, it is better to talk and
there you go, you've used it now.
Yeah, and just fucking hell, and just sort of say to people, is everything all right? Because sometimes people are just going through a tough time and go, oh, you know what, I've not been with it really, I've not been feeling well, or like my family's doing me head in, or I'm not sleeping, or whatever it may be. And I mean, we all go through difficult times, and the best thing to do is to not necessarily talk about it, but knowing that there's people there that you can have a laugh and a joke with, but if you want to have a talk with, you can have that. And I think that again is where it ties into like I was saying with SGP. I think if we went down a route that ended up sort of separating the group a little bit, then it perhaps take that way. I mean, I'll say something to you now. I said to Ray, probably 3 years ago, when we used to run our F1 leagues, I think we got to the point where we had 96 drivers.
Right, okay.
Right. So bear in mind, 96 drivers, maximum 20 in a race. So we basically had 4 divisions racing, which was 4 videos with commentary points, the works, right? And I said to Ray about 3 years ago, I said, a majority of those people, as much as I like many of them, there's not many that I would call my friend.
Yeah.
Now, it was difficult for me being in the admin position because some respected me, some liked me, some fucking hated me. But I understood that. But I approached that very much from an admin, I'm an admin, I'm not your mate. Whereas both me, Ray and Steve are all under the same opinion of, with the DGT guys, it's not that there's admins and there's racers. There's a group of mates that are racing together.
Yeah. And I think that's fair. That's a fair thing to say. I fully agree with that. Fully agree.
We're getting all deep and emotional now.
Let's move away from the deep and emotional stuff, and let's get back on to one more idea from myself. How about if we do a season, 9 races standard. Race 1, everyone starts in the same car. Race 2, we use the same car with the exception to, say, the first, whoever finishes in the top 3 in the previous race, and they move to a less powerful car, let's say that. Then the race 3, whoever finishes top 3 in that, they'll move down. So if you wasn't in the top 3 for the first race, you'd move to the second car. If you was, you'd move to the third car, and so on and so forth, to a less powered car.
It's an interesting idea.
If that makes sense, you know. And
it
I
does.
suppose that could remove the lack of being able to lock down a power to weight ratio. It's something that can be done if you finish top 3. There you go. You move on to your next car.
It's not a bad idea. That's not an idea that has already been put forward. It's an interesting one. There's been a similar idea, but not exactly in that way. I kind of like that though. It's like taking a success ballast.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
The previous idea, I mean, I've thrown a couple of ideas at him. I said to him, well, look, you got 9 races. How about you go right? For race 1, it's the group for Subaru. For race 2, it's the group for Ferrari. For race 3, it's the group for whatever, and have a different car for each race, but we're all in the same car. And that was so. There's been similar ideas to that, or there was even one of going, maybe starting with, say, a road car at the first race, and then the second race a better road car, and the third better, until you go up to then. So basically, your last race would be in, say, group 1s. The second to last would be in group 2s. The third to last would be group 3s. So you'd work it. So basically, you're going up the car scale. So those ideas have been kind of had to bring in the possibility of using different types of cars, because I know they've got a list of potential league cars, and unfortunately we're never going to get to use them all. And that's where the idea came from of perhaps using multiple cars in a season. The idea that you've had is not a bad one, of if you're successful you move on to the next car. Now, I'm not saying that this would happen, but this is the discussion that would happen, right? Because I know Ray, I know Steve, SGP, and I know me. And it's only fair that this point I'm about to make is discussed, right? So the idea is brilliant, okay? But what are you going to do if in race 1 I'm in 3rd place and go, I'm going to back off a bit, let him go past me, I'll lose 2 points, but in the next race I've got a better car than those 3, and then I'll win.
Unless you what you could do to counter that is to change the points difference between positions.
You could, yeah.
Equally, I suppose if that, and this is all on the spot kind of thinking. The downside to that is you've got to make sure that people have those cars, and if someone wins 8 races in a row, despite them being in a less powerful car each race, they've got to have 9 different cars, and of course if they haven't got it, they've got to use their credits to buy it. And what if they run out of credits, for example? There's a lot of things that go against it as well, isn't there?
I know it can be seen as a very negative way of looking at things. Like, for example, I think your idea is a brilliant one, but I also know that I'd have to think about the potential negatives, because although I don't think anyone in our group would take advantage of a situation like that, it could happen at some point. I mean, I've seen it happen. I've seen people do things that shock you. So it's something that you kind of have to think about. And it's like you said, okay, if somebody if they haven't got all 9 cars, then would it be a problem? But to be fair, I think what DGT would do is they'd probably say, right, we've got this concept. Has everybody got these 9 cars? If not, can you afford to get them? And basically, if everybody didn't have all 9 cars, they wouldn't go with that idea.
Yeah.
So, because it'd be easy to go, oh, let's go and race the Pagani Zonda. Costs 3.8 million. Go and buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a phenomenal car, but if you ain't got the 3.8 million, or if
you're stuck, aren't you? You know.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, DGT have gone. I mean, okay, there's been times where they've said, buy this car, go buy this car, go buy this car, and that's because those cars are either really good fun to drive when we're having random races, and they're cars you're going to want because you can use them in those races, or they're cars that could be potential league cars, and when the time comes, it's better if you've got the car. So. Yeah, it's. I mean, well, they say there's no such thing as a bad idea. There is, but the ideas you've had are not bad ones. Let's put it that way.
No. And you know, there's plenty of other ideas that could be made by other people as well. You could argue that any ideas never a bad idea, isn't it? It's always something for the admins to think about.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not an admin. But I would always encourage everyone to, if they've got an idea, just to speak up.
Yeah.
Because I think that they'd appreciate that as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Anybody that has an idea at any time, feel free to let them know. What I will say is sometimes you may get the response of, no, we're not going to do that. And it may come across as like, oh, they're not fucking interested. But there's a big difference. I mean, let's see. I've probably been waffling for 30 minutes about this kind of stuff. To give a full answer on occasion can take a long time.
Yeah.
And in a message it might not come across, so sometimes it's easier to just go, it's not a bad idea, but no, we're not going to do that, we've done it before in other things, or our experience basically says no, we don't want to do that. So for example, car setups, are we going to bring in car setups? No. Now someone might give that suggestion and get the answer of no and think, well, fucking hell, they're not listening to me. But the longer answer is, okay, why won't we bring setups in? Well, because, let's say for example, SGP and Steve F1, we know they do quite a bit of practice.
Yeah.
Now bring in the opportunity for them to put setups on their car, and majority of the rest of the grid don't have the time to do that. So now those two are further ahead of everybody else, and everybody else has got zero chance of staying with them, let alone beating them. So instead of making things better or closer, or allowing drivers to get the car to handle how they prefer, it spreads the field. It doesn't make racing closer, it doesn't make racing better. What makes racing good is having cars that can race wheel to wheel, and having drivers that are willing to give that bit of space. Being able to come on and just drive, rather than come on and spend any of your driving time on setup and on setup and on setup. And I mean, okay, ask Twilight, how many times did he spend 2 or 3 days working on a setup to then on race day change it?
Yeah.
And then not be happy with how the car handled in the race.
And that, I suppose that's the kind of thing, setups, anything like that could impact the grid to that, it could make the distance between first and last even bigger.
Yeah.
I think that would have an effect on the league as well. For example, I know that, if I was racing without weak boost or slipstream, for example, and it was completely turned off, that would, in a way, potentially have an effect on me in this league, because I wouldn't be as competitive as what I am usually, if that makes sense. And I suppose the admins they've just got a lot to consider when they think about rules and regulations for different seasons, haven't they? So or keeping everyone happy.
Yeah, I mean, you can never keep everybody happy, but I mean, it's like, with the boost and things like the boost is one that at the end of the day, it's there not necessarily to keep everyone together, but it's there so that if somebody happens to ruin your race, you can get back into it.
You got a chance to catch up, haven't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've been trying to say to Hay recently is, because in practice Hay has been he's been doing really well, but then basically been saying to himself, well, I know I'm not this quick, this is the boost. And I keep saying to him, or I've said to him a few times, the boost isn't keeping you there, you are. The boost lets you get there, but it's you that keeps you there. So the boost allows you to catch up, but you've then got to drive in a way that allows you to stay there or move forward a bit. The boost is not what is keeping you with everybody else. It's allowed you to get there, and then it's up to the driver to stay there. But yeah, I mean, with the setups as well. I mean, I know when we did the Red Bull Junior season, I know in that one basically went, right, I'm doing this with my rear wing, I'm putting max rear wing on it, and I'm touching nothing else on the setup other than getting my gears right. Because if I went down the route of doing setups, it's not going to end up in fun races for me, and it's not going to be fun for anybody else watching me drive off into the distance.
No, of course not.
Now, not everybody's going to be able to be in that position to be able to go, you know what, I'm not going to bother touching the setup, I'm going to leave it.
Yeah.
Especially if they know, well, if I can find something with the setup that gives me that extra second, it's worth me doing it.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, the amount of time it takes you to get that extra second.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, right, I think we've waffled a bit there, so this is probably the longest race video we've ever done. But no, it's always
part of it.
Well, it's always good to have new people on commentary. It's always good to, I mean, having you mention your ideas there. I mean, if it inspires one of the other guys to have another idea and another idea, then it's all well and good. And to be honest, I have no problem answering the questions that I can in those kind of situations, because sometimes people may feel that they can't ask questions or don't know how to ask or don't know who to ask. So yeah, why not ask it live on a recording?
We can put some questions to the next commentators for the end of the race in the chat. So
oh yeah.
New feature.
It could be.
Ask Dave.
Nobody spotted, or literally hardly anyone. I mean, no one's mentioned it to me. Hardly anyone has noticed that the spy cam has not been there all season.
No, it hasn't. To be honest, I have noticed. I've just not said anything.
Yeah. Well, nobody else has said anything. Steve F1, he didn't know. I mentioned it to him after 3 races. He was like, is it not there? Get this, we're recording the footage for this race, and I'm saying to the team, Demon R's about to make 4 overtakes in one corner. SRI says it's alright, just put him on the spy cam.
Incredible.
Yeah,
even the admins don't know.
Exactly. It's like, right, it's not been there 6 races anyway. But
unless he wants to bring it back, fairness to Ray, maybe he's watching it and he thought, do you know what this race really want? The spy cam back.
Yeah, could do. I mean, what I will say is I enjoyed having the spy cam on, but I don't think it necessarily fully added something. And I think if I was going to do a spy cam again, it'd be more in a broadcast view rather than an onboard view.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. If you make it a similar view to what we see in the race footage, but for one car, that might be different. But yeah.
But at the same time, it's not a route that I'm probably going to go down unless we really feel the need. It'll be interesting to see what we can do with the next few championships, though. Anyway, right, I'm going to wrap us up there. So, Rich, thank you very much for joining us on commentary. You've done very well for your first attempt. No,
thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Congratulations to the Steves for finishing top 2, for Mitch for finishing the race with no fuel. And every other driver. It was a really nice race to watch. Plenty of overtakes and some good fun in the pack as well.
Yep, definitely. Okay, let's take a look at what that race then has done to the race result and the championship standings. Confirmation then of the race result for round 7, and SGP takes the victory and a maximum 20 points. Steve F1 finishes in 2nd place and Demonar in 3rd, just ahead of Jason in 4th. SRI recovered to 5th and 11 points for him. Mitch was the last to finish on the lead lap, 6th place for him and 10 points and an empty fuel tank. David Hart finished in 7th place, unfortunately though does get a -3 point penalty for an incident that was kind of caused by his lag, so Dave didn't really know that it had happened, unfortunately. In 8th place, Jimmy, 8 points for him. Formula Gary finishes in 9th, with Bunsell in 10th, Hay in 11th, Conrad 12th, Fluffy Planet of disappointing 13th place for him, and also a -3 point penalty for him, which means all of his pain is for no gain, unfortunately, today. Twilight finished in 14th and bagged 2 points for that final position. Okay, let's see what that has done then to the championship standings. Well, Steve F1 still leads the way, however it is now only by 2 points with 2 races to go. Demonar has jumped up back into 3rd place on 90 points. I think the only way he's winning the championship is if Steve F1 and SGP don't appear in the next 2 races. Don't think that's going to happen though. Tyler sits in 4th now on 76 points, a little bit ahead of Jason in 5th, and SRI still sitting quite high up the order in 6th place on 60 points. David Harpy's 7th at the moment on 50 points, and he's 9 ahead of Twilight, who's in 8th place. We then got Formula Gary and Mitch both sharing 9th place on 39 points, while Rich Blues didn't race in this one but still sits in 11th place on 34 points. I say still, I don't know if he was anyway, but he's there. Okay, Conrad and Hay both sharing 12th place and 28 points each, and they're just ahead of Jimmy on 25 points, who's 1 ahead of Fluffy on 24 points, who's 5 ahead of Bunsell on 19. As I mentioned, next up is Laguna Seca. It could be an interesting one, and after that it is Spa, I believe. So if you want to check out all of the action, or as much as we can capture, then make sure you come and join us next week. Have a good one everybody, and we'll see you all again soon.